Hari Om. Hari Om. Good afternoon. We'll get started with the invocation prayers.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तुते व्यास विशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटम् नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम्। लोके सज्जन षट्परैरहरः पीपीयमानं बुधा भूयाद् भारत पंकजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसिन श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैर्गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। Devaya tasmai namaha. Devaya tasmai namaha.
Hari Om. So today we do a revision of chapter 6, which is Dhyana Yoga or Atma Samyama Yoga. Actually, last time I had said that we'll just do a quick recap and then we'll dive into section 2 or starting with chapter 7. But then during the week, I realized that, Bhagavan keeps telling us to do everything samachara, properly with excellence. At least his lessons we should do in a samachara way. So I thought, let's not just do it for the sake of it and dive into the next one. Let's do this properly. And then, we'll start section 2 next satsang. So Bhagavan Sri Krishna, he emphatically has said that the path of Karma Yoga is a must. And we will see that in the first verse of this chapter.
Atha shashtodhyayah Atma Samyama Yogaha Shri Bhagavanuvacha Anashrita Karma Phalam Karyam Karma Karutiyaha Sasanyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha.
So Bhagavan is saying, sa sannyasi cha, sa yogi cha. So one who performs karma yoga is a sannyasi and is a yogi. So karma yoga gives us two things. The first thing that karma yoga gives us is serenity of the mind, peaceful mind, the calmness of the mind, actually serenity and peacefulness. And this comes through Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. And it also gives us the capacity to renunciate, give up, hankering for results, the phala, the fruits of the action, the fruits that come from the action, not get attached to the action to an extent that while perform the action, before performing the action, after the action, we are thinking about the fruits of what we are going to get from it. And this comes from Prasada Buddhi. And these two give us the capability of single-pointed focus and deep focus in what we are doing. And that is nothing but Chitta Ekagrata. And it also gives us the capacity to pursue in a determined manner whatever we are doing. That determined pursuit is called Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. And Chitta Ekagrata and Vyavasayatmika Buddhi give us the capability to perform Nididhyasana, which is nothing but contemplation and absorption in the knowledge that we gain through Karma Yoga. And Dhyana or meditation comes from this Nididhyasana. And that or Nididhyasana is the same as Dhyana or meditation. And this then leads to Atma Samyama. And in Atma Samyama Yoga, one builds on this capacity when you continue to do that yoga. So we see that while up until now Bhagavan referred to yoga as Karma Yoga, here when he refers to yoga, it is Dhyana Yoga. So thus Bhagavan lays out the path from Karma Yoga to Atma Samyama or Atma Samyama Yoga. Karma Yoga, Chitta Shuddhi, and then Chitta Ekagrata, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, and then Aruruksha, the person who wishes to rein in the monkey mind, the prancing mind. That wish, the person who has that wish is Aruruksha. And then Shama, which is control of the mind, Nididhyasana, which is meditation, and thereby Atma Samyama. It is like, if you recollect the example that I used, horse riding. Horse riding is an amazing sport. It is actually said to teach a lot of values with which one can, learn to live life in the right manner. That is because getting the horse under control within your wishes and wants and getting the horse to do what we want as the rider is an exercise in itself. So in fact, when you're first learning and even after you've learned, when you're first getting onto the horse, And I said learning because it's a lot more difficult when you're learning, right? You have to keep your one foot on the left foot for right-handed people who mount the horse from the left side. You keep the left foot on the stirrup, hold on to the saddle, a good grip on the saddle, and the horse is trotting. It's continuously moving all the time. And imagine if the horse, instead of trotting, it started sprinting, galloping, then what would happen? You know, if you allow the horse to gallop at that point in time with one foot on the stirrup, one foot outside, just hanging like that, you know, you will be thrown off. But the way you control the horse, it is trotting, and it requires a lot of work before that for the horse to know that my friend is going to climb on top of my back and I need to trot and not gallop. And then you take a leap, from the foot, you use your right foot to take a jump and then swing it above the back of the horse and then sit down, get comfortable, hold on to the reins, and then you are capable of riding the horse. And the horse also knows that, the way you work with the horse. So, till when should one perform Karma Yoga? I'll come back to the horse example in shortly again, okay? But till when should one perform Karma Yoga? Till one becomes a Yoga Rudha. This person who is firmly established on the back of the horse, well in control, holding the reins, stable. Similarly, in life, when you have that stability, when you are firmly established in yoga, that Yoga Rudha, till you are there, you keep performing Karma Yoga. Exactly like climbing, and getting on top of the horse. Till you are firmly seated, you have to be performing that action. And for a period of time when you're performing that action, you are neither on the ground nor on the horse. You're kind of in between. And Bhagavan gives 3 signs which are litmus test to show that a person is a Yoga Rudha. That we will see in verse 4.
Yada hinendriyateshu na karmasvanusajjate sarva sankalpa sanyasi yogharudastadujyate.
So, na indriyarteshu. Na indriyarteshu, not, na is not, indriyarteshu, dwelling in the sense objects. The artha of the indriyas are the sense objects. The indriyas are the senses. The artha is the object. Like I said earlier, the coffee is the object for my taste. So that is the indriyarteshu, not dwelling in that. Na karmasvanu shajjate, not attached to action, which I just talked about a while back. So that before the action, during the action, after the action, you are thinking about what will come out of the action. So not being attached to the action. And sarva sankalpa sannyasi, having renounced all sankalpa. So essentially a person who is not dependent upon or has renounced dependency on, dropped the dependency on these 3 aspects. Number 1, imaginary happiness, which is the indriyarteshu connection. Imagining the taste of the coffee. Imagining the coffee, even before it is in front of you. Imaginary happiness. Sensory hankering that comes from this happiness. The minute you start imagining the happiness, you feel the taste of the coffee in your taste buds. You smell the coffee in your nose buds. That sensory hankering which comes from the imaginary happiness. And planning actions to fulfill these 2. The imaginary happiness and the sensory hankering. That comes from the hankering. You actually start planning the action. So just like riding the horse or getting on top of the horse in control in the saddle, when initially we do perform karma, without the Ishwararpana Buddhi, without the Prasada Buddhi, before the karma becomes the yoga, that kind of karma is desire driven. It has all these 3 elements. It has the element of imaginary happiness, it has the element of sensory hankering, it has the element of planning to obtain those 2. And there the mind is all over the world of desires. Imagine, the horse had started galloping. Similarly, when you are doing karma, the mind just goes all over the world of it, starts galloping like the horse, the mind. When that happens, you get thrown off from the basic principle of life. But when you want to control your mind, when that is becoming an aruruksha, that aspect of saying, yes, I want to control this. I don't want this mind to run away like a horse, throwing me off balance again and again and again, repeatedly in my life. Every time I try to saddle on it, it throws me off. That person is a aruruksha. And when you have controlled it through Ishvara Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi, once you have ascended and you are firmly in that saddle, the reins of your mind in your hands, that is a Yoga Rudha. And then Bhagavan says, having become this Yoga Rudha, he says, lift yourself by yourself. We will see that in verse 5 and 6.
Uddharedatmanatmanam natmanamavasadaye atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanaha bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmanajitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartedatmaiva shatruvat.
So Bhagavan says, to get to the level of pursuit required, please lift yourself by yourself. Uddharet atmanam atmanam. And through discipline, conquer yourself. Yenat maiva atmana jitaha. Through that pursuit of discipline, conquer your own self. So inside of us, there are two personalities, as we saw, the higher divine self and the lower satanic self. The one that we feed, like the Cherokee story that we talked about, the wolf. The one that we feed is the one that thrives. So if we feed the divine self, the divinity will thrive. If we feed the satanic self, the Satan will thrive. And Bhagavan says, master yourself, become your own friend, is what he says in this part. It's like lifting weights in the gym, that helps make the muscles stronger. Lifting your own self makes the character stronger. And why should a person go through this laborious training and self-discipline? We will see in verse 8 and 9.
Jnana vijnana triptatma kudastu vijitendriyaha yukta ityuchyate yogi samaloštashma kanchanaha suhran mitradyudasena madhyasadvesha bandhushu sadhushvapi cha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate.
So why should we do that? So that Bhagavan says, in order to become a yukta, harmonized with yourself, harmonized with the supreme self, in order to become that yukta, you go through this discipline, you go through this effort. And Bhagavan says, when that happens, the yukta, that yukta is jnana vijnana triptatma. Triptatma. Triptatma is a person who is fulfilled. That fulfilled Atma, that is Tripta, by what? Here Bhagavan is saying Jnana Vijnana. Earlier he had talked about Atma Tripti, Atma Rati, Atma Santushti. Here Bhagavan is saying Jnana Vijnana. By Jnana is knowledge, the book knowledge that we read. And Vijnana is experiential wisdom that we experience for ourselves. This yukta, by doing this, has both the benefit of jnana and vijnana. So initially you may see a horse riding equestrian video and see the jockeys doing it. But once you do that a couple of times, Then you have the experience of saddling the horse and then mounting the horse. That is Vijnana. And Bhagavan says that this person is Kutastaha. Kutastaha means firmly established in that knowledge, unshaken by the experiences that then the person faces. Human beings will always face experiences right through this course or journey of life. But this person is like an anvil. Kutaha means anvil. Anvil is the stone, the flat stone on which the blacksmith beats the metal into shape. The metal, look, the metal is a powerful element, right? The metal changes shape as per the requirement, but the stone on which the beating is done, that remains as it is. Similarly, this Jnana Vijnana Triptatma faces all the experiences, the highs and lows, the extremities of life that we have seen earlier. But like that anvil, is firm, is established, and is unshaken by all the experiences, whether they are good experiences or bad experiences. And the person is also Vijitendriyaha. Vijitendriyaha means restraining the mind. Indriyaha, Vijay. Having that control, the victory over the body, mind, and intellect. And this victory comes aram se, without any much effort, because the person has gone through all that effort. It's exactly like that sense of having gone through that effort, which is not easy. Extreme coordination is required and strength is required to be able to mount the horse, which is moving. But once you have gone through the effort, when you're in the saddle with the reins, it becomes a beautiful ride, a beautiful breeze. So naturally, without any effort, this person is able to face through these experiences. And Bhagavan says that the yukta, being harmonized in this manner, which is also both internally and externally, he attaches the same value to everything. Sama Loshtashma Kanchanaha. Loshta is a clod of earth. Ashma is stone. Kanchana is gold. This person views all three as the same. Much in contrary to the world today, where most people disregard the clod of earth, and all these clod of earth together is our planet Earth, and attach importance to this stupid metal, which is an element in this planet called gold. And by attaching too much value into the gold, the planet itself is degrading. So this person gets the sanity to look at all of them in a equanimous manner, and thereby not get attracted to one against the other, and thereby being able to preserve everything together, being able to perform the yagyas in the right manner. And also, not just in terms of the elements, also does not allow different kinds of people. Remember, people are the most advanced of the creative elements, simply because we have highly advanced emotional and intellectual faculties. And this interaction that this yukta has with the other people, that does not cause any dent in the inner poise of the yukta. A beautiful, loving equation or relationship with people doesn't destabilize the person, neither does a very sorrowful relationship, or if somebody has caused some kind of a grievous insult or whatever, with all kinds of people. And Bhagavan talks about Suhrit, Mitra, which are two different kinds of friends, Ari, Dvesha, two different kinds of enemies, Udasina, Madhyastha, partial, impartial, Bandhuhu, own relatives, Sadhushu and Papeshu, the good people and the bad people. None of them affect the inner poise of this human being, this yukta. So what is left now? After all of this that Bhagavan has said, the only thing left is to prepare for meditation. Now Bhagavan tells us how to prepare for performing dhyana. And he doesn't just tell you, sit down and start meditating. He gives a beautiful step-by-step manual. We will recite verses 10 to 15 all together.
Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi stitaha ekakiyata chittatma nirashira parigraha शुचौ देशे प्रतिष्ठाप्य स्थिरमासनमात्मनः नात्युच्छ्रितं नातिनीचं चैलाजिनकुशोत्तरम् तत्रैकाग्रं मनः कृत्वा यतचित्तेन्द्रियक्रियः उपविश्यासने युञ्ज्यात् योगमात्मा विशुद्धये समं कायशिरो ग्रीवम् धारयन्नचलं स्थिरः सम्प्रेक्ष्य नासिकाग्रं स्वं दिशश्चानवलोकयन् प्रशान्तात्मविगतभिः ब्रह्मचारिवृत्ति स्थितः मनसंयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः युञ्जन्नेवं सदात्मानं योगी नियतमानसः शान्तिं निर्वाण परमां मत्समस्तामधिगच्छति.
So one of the things that I am also doing is, covering the verses together, because if we do it more detailed way, this will take more than one satsang. And we will not go through word by word or letter by letter. We will just go through the gist of what Bhagavan has told us in terms of how to prepare for meditation, this manual that he has given us. So the first thing he tells us is, find a place that is in solitude. Obviously, because solitude will help focus much better, bring in that chitta ekagraha in a much more efficient manner. And he says a place that is shuchau, clean. If it is not clean, please clean it. Shuchau, in fact, later on also in Bhagavad Gita, you will see that it has very huge prominence in Sanatana Dharma. Cleanliness is of utmost importance. And then he says a seat, which is your own seat, so that when you are getting into meditation, you are not evicted from that. So it's find your own seat, a seat which is firm, neither high nor low, sthiram, and neither too high nor too low, well insulated, soft and dry. He actually gives three materials that should be placed on one on top of the other. But in today's world, if we don't get the material, then well insulated, soft and dry. We don't need to go looking for animal skin. We don't need to go looking for grass, but well insulated, soft and dry. Then he says, once you have found this place in solitude and a seat which is your own firm, well insulated, soft and dry, then focus on the mind. Have a mind that is free of wants and wishes, free of the sense of possibilities of what are going to happen. Get that vigataha, be free of those. And the actions of the body, the mind and the intellect controlled. Whatever the action that the body, mind and intellect normally indulges in, rein them in. And with that reined in, Bhagavan says, the body, the head and the neck, erect and still. Not slouching, not relaxing, just erect and still in that posture. And then seemingly gazing at the tip of your nose. And just to ensure that people don't get confused, because earlier Bhagavan had said, Chakshushaha Bhruvoha, in between the two eyebrows, having your gaze. That was in the previous chapter. So that people don't get confused, he says, without looking around internally. So the seemingly looking at the tip of your nose, that is seemingly. If somebody else is observing you, it will appear as if you are looking at the tip of your nose. But internally, you are not wandering. You are focused at one point. And that one point, Bhagavan advises, is between the eyebrows. Because that will help Chitta Ekagrata. And then he says, having made the mind single pointed. This, like I said, will help Chitta Ekagrata. Bhagavan says, next, get your mind Chitta Ekagrata. Get it single pointed. And why do you do this? Like, I think Rama or somebody asked a question the other day, right? So everything, even Bhagavan says that don't have the desire or wish. But when you have the Chitta Ekagrata, you are focusing on that one element. Similarly, here you do this with the goal of purification of the self. And be serene-minded. And then he says, be fearless. Like earlier he had said, one has to be Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. In this case, Bhagavan is saying Bhaya. Be fearless. Because possibly he is referring to a situation where if you are going to be seated, eyes closed, every element focused, concentrated on one thought, then there could be a fear that what if something is happening around me? What if an animal comes? Whatever that fear may be. So Bhagavan points out fear here. He doesn't point out the root cause, which is desire. He points out fear. And then with self-discipline. Self-discipline, brahmacharya aspect, right? Because what is that brahmacharya aspect? It is not celibacy in this context. In this context, brahmacharya aspect is that anytime things are happening which are against this prescription that Bhagavan has given, have the discipline to come back. For example, if the thought is going to all around rain, bring it back in, it will go. Suddenly you'll realize that you are not meditating, the thought is going somewhere. Bring it back. Keep doing it again and again and again. That discipline, that is brahmacharya. And then the mind under control and the mind in me, mat chittaha. And with me as your supreme goal, mat praha. So this is the manual or the preparation that Bhagavan advises to get into meditation. And now what is left is actually meditating. Now you have to, Bhagavan will now talk about how to dive into meditation. But before that, it is important to have an understanding of our mind so that our mind can easily dive into meditation. And we had seen this earlier also, and we should revise this. This is an important aspect. So there are 5 states of the mind. The first is Kshipta. Kshipta is a scattered, agitated mind, Kshipta Manaha, the monkey mind. This is the state of Rajas, the Rajasic mind. It is moving all around. It's very agitated. One moment, one thought, another moment, another thought, third moment, third branch, and so on and so forth. Bahushaka. The second kind of mind is the Mudha. Mudha Manaha. Mudha is dull, drowsy, indolent, lethargic, a state of tamas. And then there is Vikshipta. Vikshipta means something that is not Kshipta, other than Kshipta. So Kshipta was what? Scattered, turbulent, agitated mind. So what is not scattered, turbulent, agitated mind is a calm mind. That is the third type of Manaha. This Vikshipta Manaha is on the way to becoming single-pointed. It is temporarily focused. So as much as the mind is wandering, the mind is also able to harness, bring the reins back in and back into control. For example, that steed, if you suddenly notice you are on the horse and the horse is going at a speed which is more or less, or whatever, like one of the equestrian sports, you are supposed to maintain the horse at the absolute correct, the trotting pace. I'm forgetting now, what that is called, but it's one of the, how do you control you and your steed, both of you together? How are you trotting? It's a beautiful sport to watch actually. Initially it may seem boring, but once you get into it, it's like you see all the science and the art behind being able to achieve that humongous task. So when you notice that, you need to check it. You need to keep checking it. So in this situation, in Vikshiptaha, the mind is able to check the wanderingness or the dullness. It is able to bring it back, correct it quickly. And the more we practice, the more easier it becomes. But it is not yet concentrated. It is not yet Chitta Ekagrata. This is only temporary. It is tending towards concentration. In the state of Kshipta, Mudha and Vikshipta, meditation is not happening. The fourth state is Ekagraha. Ekagraha means single pointed, focused. Agraha, Eka, single pointedness. Having only one thought. The process of bringing the mind into the state of Ekagraha is called Nididhyasana. And the state of Ekagraha itself is called Savikalpa Samadhi, or it is also known as Sampragyata Samadhi. Savikalpa Samadhi or Sampragyata Samadhi. Awareness of that single thought. And what thought is that? Bhagavan said, Matchitta Matpraha. So it's like that example I gave last time, the Edgar Mitchell, the Apollo 14 astronaut. He is described being out there in space and looking at the planet Earth. He kind of drew a corollary with Savikalpa Samadhi. He said that is exactly like Savikalpa Samadhi. The way he described it was, he said you are out there in space, in that vast universe, and then there is this pale blue dot, which is extremely significant to you, because that's home. You don't know anything else in that vast, massive space where you are other than that planet. Extremely, extremely significant. But now, sitting in that spaceship, looking at that small, tiny blue dot, in the scheme of things, it is insignificant. Completely insignificant. And he says that looking at that one object, which is your home, which is that planet Earth, and contemplating on the significance and insignificance of that planet. Significant and at the same time so insignificant. He says you just go into a trance. And he relates that to Savikalpa Samadhi. Beautiful example, that he quotes, Edgar Mitchell. So having that thought, Matchitta Matpraha. So if you are fortunate enough to travel into space, we can look at that beautiful pale blue dot and think like that. Sitting on the pale blue dot, not seeing it as a dot, but as a massive flat body. Then you think about that dot, which is Bhagavan. And when one thought is pursued, you have to pursue it in exclusion to everything else that is coming in again and again and again, then that is Chitta Ekagrata, single pointedness. And being in this state for a duration of time, the mind automatically on its own coming into this state takes a lot of effort. But once you are in this state and you are able to stay in the state for a period of time, up till this point, there is effort. Then magically on its own, without even realizing, the mind goes into the fifth state. And that state is the state of Niruddha. Niruddha, where the mind is by itself. There's nothing else. Not even that single thought. Complete cessation of thoughts is Niruddha. And this is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi or Asampragyata Samadhi. In this state, the single thought also completely ends, ceases. Like I said, cessation. Many thoughts to single thought to no thought. This is like that army route march or the, that race that I talked about, the 100-kilometer race, right? That actually happens. Your mind is completely focused on all kinds of thoughts. In the beginning, do I have to do this? Then while you are doing it, chalo, let's do it. And then you have the pain, you have the discomfort, you have, the body going to one side, that strap cutting in, all kinds of things in your mind. Then you're cursing the guy who's standing there saying, chalo, chalo, come on, well done, shut up, what the, all that is going on. And then comes a point in time, how long will all that happen? 15 kilometers, maybe 18 kilometers. Then your mind keeps saying, do it, let's do it, let's go, just do it, let's finish it, just one thought. Karte hai. That's the only thought that is there. And then like magic at some point in time, without even knowing, because you know that it happened after 6 hours. You don't know when it happened, it just happens. And then you realize that, my God, 6 hours have gone by. There's nothing. You're floating with the 30 kgs in your back, with all those equipment with you. You're just floating for not 1 or 2 kilometers, for 50, 60 kilometers. So that movement from the single point of focus to niruddha, chitta ekagrata to niruddha, that happens on its own. There is no effort required. The effort is required only till chitta ekagrata. And a mind that has emptied itself of thoughts, that goes to its original state. Because thoughts come in. Like my favorite example, if I say camel now, though I've said it every single time, I've used this example. But you have not thought about camel right now. So, but the minute I say camel, camel comes in, desert comes in, the white sand comes in, all of that comes into. So, the mind is nothing but a collection of thoughts. Whatever our thoughts are. And a mind that has freed itself, emptied itself of thoughts, is the original mind. Thought is object plus consciousness. Consciousness is thought minus object. The flow of thoughts is mind. And when that flow of thoughts is removed, it is self-aware. There's nothing. It is the consciousness. And Bhagavan says that this is the state of Niruddha or Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And then Bhagavan gives us 3 definitions of Dhyana Yoga or Atma Samyama Yoga. He gives us 3 definitions and he says this is yoga. Remember till now when he referred to yoga, it was Karma Yoga. Now he's saying this, Arjuna, is yoga. Yoga Sannitam. Yoga Sannitam means this is yoga. And what is yoga? 3 definitions that he gives us. We'll read verse 20 to 22.
Yatro paramati chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyannatmani tushyati sukhamatyantikam yattad buddhigrahyamatimbriyam veti yatra na chaivayam stitaschalati tattvataha yam labdva cha param labam manyate nadikam tataha yasmin stito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate.
So what are the 3 definitions that Bhagavan gives? Number 1, he says, by the practice of yoga, through your own mind, through the mind, seeing the self in the self, one who is absolutely fulfilled. So by this practice that Bhagavan just described, right, from preparing the ground, finding the place, preparing the ground, holding the body erect, all of that. Then finally, mat chitta mat paraha, all that done through that yoga, through your own mind, seeing the original state of consciousness in the same original state of consciousness, and in that being fulfilled. That, Bhagavan says, is yoga. Then he says, established in this fulfilled bliss, in this infinite fulfilled bliss, that is grasped by reason. By the way, here the reason is still there. So you understand by logic that this is possible. It's like me trying to explain, for you it is book knowledge. For those of you who have not, those who have done marathons may understand what I'm talking about. Okay, but unless you have that vijnana, it is jnana for you. It is something which someone who has experience is relating. But once you go through that, you're able to grasp it. You're able to, hey, that happens. And this is how it happens. It's like that, electricity yoga that Swami Chinmayananda talks about, right? Electricity yoga, how do you do? To find out what electricity is. I don't believe what electricity. You are saying electricity is all. Okay, then remove that bulb, put your finger in that bulb, switch the switch on, and you will feel that jolt. That is electricity. And you do that yoga to find out what electricity is. So Bhagavan says, through this yoga, you find out. You have to do electricity yoga to actually understand what is electricity. Otherwise, you can take your physics book and read it. But to actually understand it, you have to get that jolt, 220 volt. So when you do that yoga, when you experience that, and through that experience, you are established in that infinite bliss, and your logic knows how it has come there. You reason, you have reason for that. That grasp of reason is there. And because of that, you have transcended the senses. It happens actually in that route march also, because after some point in time, you don't feel any sense of that stripe cutting into your skin or, the weight or nothing. You don't feel sense. You don't feel that sense of pain or whatever. Sometimes even when there is a cool breeze, after some time, you don't feel the cool breeze. How beautiful breeze. Especially, when you are going with that 30 kg weight and so much physical strain and stress and all that, one whiff of cool breeze is extremely pleasing. But neither do you feel that pain of the load, nor do you feel the cool breeze. None of them you feel. That sense of transcending the sense through yoga, and then one who does not move away, one who gets established in that. Not that it is a fleeting thing and then you move on. One who is there. And then the third definition is, having experienced this pure consciousness, having been there, one who believes that nothing else is greater, nothing is greater than this. And by virtue of having experienced and by virtue of knowing that nothing is greater, one is unshaken by the heaviest of sorrows. Bhagavan gives the example of heaviest of sorrow because it's easier to be unshaken by joys. But even the heaviest of sorrows, for example, in that running that route march, 100 kilometer with 30 kg pack or whatever, the cool breeze is easier to forget about. It's the pain which keeps bugging. Or if you are running a marathon and the ankle has got a little bit pain, it's niggling, that is a bigger problem. Even that you surmount. You don't, even the heaviest of sorrows, the mind doesn't register. By being established and knowing that this is the greatest. Bhagavan after this talks about how one dives into meditation. He has told us how to prepare, and he has also defined meditation for us, this yoga for us. Now he talks about how one dives into the meditation and what is the result of that meditation. We will go through entire part of it in reading the verses, and then we will quickly summarize. So we'll go through verses 25 to 32.
Shanai Shanairuparame Buddhya Dhritiggrahitaya Atma Samstam Manakritva Nakinchidapi Chintaye Yato Yato Nishcharati Manaschanchalamastiram Tatasto Niyame Tad Atmanyeva Vasham Nayet Prashantamanasam Yenam Yoginam Sukhamuttamam Upeti Shantarajasam Brahmabhutattmakalmasham Yunjannivam Sadatmanam Yogi Vigata Kalmashaha Sukhina Brahma Samsparsham Atyantam Sukhamashruti Sarvabhutastamatmanam Sarvabhutani Jatmani Ikshate Yoga Yuktatma Sarvatra Samadarshanaha यो मां पश्यति सर्वत्र सर्वं च मयि पश्यति तस्याहं न प्रणश्यामि स च मे न प्रणश्यति सर्वभूतस्थितं यो मां भजत्येकत्वमस्थितः सर्वथा वर्तमानोऽपि स योगी मयि वर्तते आत्मौपं येन सर्वत्र समं पश्यति अर्जुन सुखं वा यदि वा दुःखं स योगी परमो मतः.
So Bhagavan starts with saying Shanaihi Shanaihi Uparamed. Shanaihi Shanaihi. Step by step, one step at a time. Attain quietude. Attain that calmness of the mind. And how does he describe that? He says the step number one, he says control your senses. The senses obviously want to express all the time. That is their job. They will be expressing all the time. It's like the horse that wants to run. But even though they want to express in the manner that they want to express, it has nothing to do with what we want. We do not allow that expression. You control, stop the senses. Then he says, hold the expression. Whatever that expression, be aware of that and hold that in the mind as a thought. Grasp the reason behind that thought. And once you are able to do this, then it is easy to expel the thought itself from the mind. Sever the union. And when that happens, that bliss that Bhagavan talks about, that takes the place of this thought of expression. And knowing that this is the greatest, that there is nothing greater than this bliss which I am currently expressing, be established in that. And when that happens, when you are established in that, there is quietude. And Bhagavan says that there are two faculties which are required for it. These are, Bhagavan says, Buddhya Dhriti Grihataya. Buddhi and Dhriti. Buddhi is knowledge and the clarity that comes from the knowledge. Like I gave that example, when you are, after a period of time, when you have gone through it, when the reason has registered, after you have run that one marathon, the second marathon, you kind of know what's coming up. The third marathon, something which you never expected came up, you still are able to handle it. So that buddhi, that knowledge, and the clarity that comes from that knowledge. And dhriti is the determination, the will. Even though there is something which is troubling you during the marathon, you have that will to complete that 42.5 kilometers. That determination, that is dhriti. And what comes from the determination? Persistence. You keep at it. Not only will you keep at it during that marathon, keep at it means what? One step after the other, tuck, 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 you are running. You will also run the second marathon. So you will keep at it. So the buddhi and the dhriti, these are the two most important faculties that are required to climb any mountain of achievement. And of course, the most important and the most difficult is that of Savikalpa Samadhi. So to get to that Savikalpa Samadhi, buddhi and dhriti are absolutely required. And then Bhagavan says that whatever, for infinite reasons, the restless, unsteady mind will keep wandering away. And whatever may be that reason, withdraw from each one of those systematically and keep bringing it under control again and again and again and again. As much, if it happens infinite times, do it infinite times. And for whatever reason it happens, keep doing this. Withdraw away, withdraw from those distractions and bring it back into self-control. And then he says, when you do this, you reach that destination, Sukham Uttamam, that supreme bliss. And that state has been reached by a peaceful mind that is fully sattvic, prashanta manasa, that has ensured that the rajasic tendencies have been destroyed, shanta rajasam, and the tamasic tendencies have been wiped away. You are completely bereft of the tamasic tendencies. All the kalmashaha, all the impurities have gone away, akalmasham. And then Bhagavan says that this yogi then attains that infinite bliss. Atyantam sukham. And that Atyantam sukham, how does it come? It comes through close contact with Brahma. Brahma samsparshan. So through this magnum opus, through this humongous task of Karma Yoga, it's an extremely difficult one. Karma Yoga, that leads to Chitta Shuddhi, that leads to Sadhana Chatushtaya, that leads to becoming an Aruruksha or Aruruksho, then a Yoga Rudha who is firmly established, then is able to do Nididhyasana, and with Nididhyasana reaches a state of Atma Sakshatkara where you can witness the self. And when you witness that self, you develop Paravairagya, which is when you reach that state of supreme dispassion, Paravairagya. And then Niruddha, thoughtless state. And that comes, Bhagavan says, comes from Brahma Samskarshan, which is close contact with the Brahman, and results in the Atyantam Sukham. Thus, I would say that Brahman is the real philosopher's stone. And whoever is able to complete this magnum opus and get in touch with the Supreme Brahman is transformed. You will see that in my examples that I'm talking about, whether it's the marathon or that route march, the transformation of a marathon runner when you do it. It's beautiful. In fact, not only that individual feels it, the person, people around feel it. Like my brother just yesterday or so did deep sea diving. So deep sea diving, he feels that supreme bliss. So much is involved in deep sea diving, right? But even the people who hear about it, who read it on it in Facebook, they also have that sense of bliss. May not be supreme bliss, but bliss. Imagine the supreme bliss of Niruddha state of mind. If a deep sea dive in the bottom of the ocean or climbing up to a peak which is 18,000 feet and just seeing the vast Himalayas around you, that supreme bliss is so supreme. Imagine this supreme bliss where it would. And then Bhagavan says, Ikshate, see. See what? This then enables the yogi to see the self, Atmanam, abiding in Sarva Bhutastha, all the other beings. And all beings, Sarva Bhutani, abiding in the self, Atmani. Everything is sama, everything is equal, everything is together. And it's a fact, you feel that when you know, one of the things that my brother talked about in the deep sea dive was about the whales. They saw a lot of whales. You don't see a distinction between you and the whale. You are under the sea, the whale is also under the sea. It's a beautiful experience. In fact, like I said the other day, one of the persons that I became very close to climbing Kedarkanta peak was Avtar. Was with me. Sarika is aware of that. She was there too. You become extremely close to. Otherwise, possibly sitting in Bangalore, you'll be probably Avtar. You'll be yelling and screaming at that day. But there, that bond, people who have served in the forces know that. The bond that is developed between a senior-most officer and a junior-most soldier. Because of what? Because of what all you have gone through together. So this person, this yogi, is able to see that the Atmanam abiding in all the bhutas is the same, and all the beings are the same as the Atmanam in yourself. And thereby this person has Sarvatra Samadarshana, has an equal view of everything. And through this equal view, the person becomes a yoga yuktatma. Mam pashyati sarvatraha, sees me everywhere. And sarvam cha mai pashyati, and sees everything in me. You see Krishna in everything, Krishna is in everything. Everything in me, me in everything. That's a beautiful experience. And Bhagavan says, Sa yogi, this yogi, sarvatha vartamanaha, whatever be the state of this person's life, the person may be a man, woman, old, young, middle-aged, whatever age, whatever sex, whatever nationality, whatever race, though we talked about a lot about race and what is the meaning of it, whatever it may be, anything that has been classified by the human intellect, performing any action, that person abides in me, mai vartate. And he says, who, by the reason of the similarity of the self of all beings, the self that is in me, the self that is in, the dog that is there in my neighbor's place, all of it, the self that is there in the whale when I do deep sea diving, that person sees the pleasure or the pain of all the bhutas as equal. And this yogi, Bhagavan says, is regarded as supreme. The joy of others is this person's joy. The sorrow or pain of others is this person's pain or sorrow, whatever it may be. That's the kind of the sage or muni, an embodiment of supreme compassion, compassion that comes from equanimity. Thus, with this, Bhagavan finishes the teaching of dhyana or meditation. He completes it. And we can be forgiven for saying that, oh my God, this is all beyond me. This is beyond any of us. And who will do this? Savikalpa Samadhi, my God, that effort required to concentrate and focus everything into one single point. It is a tremendous effort. So this is beyond. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, who even understands it? I don't even get what you're talking about. How do I see Bhagavan in everything? How do I see, everything in Bhagavan? All these are fine. Very nice to read, very nice to hear. Forget it. I am not there yet. Arjuna says exactly the similar thing. So Arjuna says, Bhagavan, this yoga, this great wisdom of meditation, which you have taught, and not only taught, you explained it in great detail, which is characterized by this equanimity that you just ended with, that everything is the same, everything is equal, characterized by that equanimity. Arjuna says, I do not see this happening. I do not see, and Arjuna specifically uses persistent and steady existence of this yoga. It may come and go here and there, but I do not see it being there persistently and being steady, which is exactly what we all experience, right? Because why? Arjuna says, because the mind is chanchalam, restless. And not only is the mind chanchalam or restless, it is pramati, turbulent. Turbulence is a powerful agitating force. We all know that. When our mind is in that zone of turbulence, nothing, it's exactly like a tornado. Anything comes in that force of that mind, like a cyclone or a tornado, is destroyed. That is the turbulent force of the mind. So it is pramati. It is balavada. It is extremely strong. If it gets hold of something and if it has got that fixation, nothing is going to take it away. We experience this in our own lives, right? And it is dridam, unyielding. Because of all the inherent tendencies, it will not yield. It's inflexible because of the vasanas. And Bhagavan says that especially, if Arjuna is asking this question, his mind is chanchalam, his mind is going to be pramati, balavada, dridam. So how do you tackle such a mind? Bhagavan says, absolutely, Arjuna, you're right. That's the best way to tackle a mind that is pramati, balavada, and dridam. You're absolutely right, he says. Without a doubt, it is difficult to control this mind. But, O son of Kunti, O my brother, my relative, he brings in that sense of love. through practice and through dispassion, the mind is restrained. So before we go to exactly what he says, see, putting in effort, we are saying practice, effort, to come up to Savikalpa Samadhi requires so much effort. That itself is a scientific art. And how should effort be put? Our Shastras describe it beautifully. And I'll use that example of getting up early to do exercise, sacrificing sleep, 1 hour, which is so difficult to do, right? I'll use that as an example. How do you put in effort? The first is anukula, optimal effort, favorable effort. We have to be smart in putting in effort. If I sleep for 3 hours or 4 hours, thinking that, oh, I have to get up, oh, I have to get up, oh, I have to get up, I have to get up, I have to get up, then I will not be able to get up. At 5 a.m. when I have to get up is when the sleep will be at its peak. So it needs to be optimal. It needs to be under control. It needs to be favorable. Then Dirgha Kala. Dirgha Kala, it should be for a long time. Not that one day I did it, another 4 days I don't do it, 5th day I did it, another 6 days I don't do it. Then after that I do it for 2-3 days together, then another 2 weeks I don't do it. It can't be like that. It has to be sustained effort over a period of time. Malcolm Gladwell says that 10,000 hours of effort is required to make an expert. Then it should be Nairantarya, without disruption. Because if there is disruption, then one has to begin all over again. We know that, given in this example, if I don't wake up every morning and go, and if there is disruption, I don't go for, say, 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or a month. It took me 6 months to lose 2 kgs. It takes me 2 weeks to build 2.5 kgs, bring back. In this example, okay, some people are blessed in that manner. They don't need all that. But in this example, when you need to sacrifice sleep and exercise to stay fit and keep your weight in check, in that example, within 2-3 weeks, I'll have put on that. So, for example, when I went on the trek, when did we go? In December. I lost about 4 kgs. I put on about almost 2.75 or something. So, it has to be without disruption. Then Satkara, with lots of love. You should feel a sense of affinity doing that. If you keep cursing every morning, oh my God, another I have to sleep, damn that alarm, then the chances are that Nairantara will not happen. The chances are that Dirgha Kala will not happen. When you have that love, when you have Satkara, then it will happen consistently over a period of time. And Asevita, we have to cherish it. We have to enjoy the experience that we get. If we go out and the nice, chill, cool air, we enjoy it. We don't say, oh my God, it's too cold. My bed was so much more comfortable. Then it will not happen. And finally, Dhrida Bhumi. Well established. Get it well established. Initially, getting up early will be taking a lot of effort. But after that, it becomes a breeze. It becomes easy. It becomes a nature habit. Once it becomes a habit, that means it is Dhrida Bhumi. It is well established. And what are the means to master the mind that Bhagavan is giving? He gives 2. Abhyasena, Vairagyena. Abhyasena is through practice, and through practice achieve perfection. And Vairagyena, Vairagya is dispassion. And through dispassion achieve capacity. Now Bhagavan had also said, Shanaihi Uparamed. Now he is saying Abhyasena, Vairagyena. So step by step, lot of effort, lot of dispassion. Arjuna says, God, how much more difficult will you make it for me? And the question he comes up with is that one who is unable to control the mind, not because the person has not tried, but because the mind has wandered away from yoga for a period of time, because the person could not attain perfection, what kind of end does this person need? One who has traversed the path of Brahman. He says, Bhagavan, the person has traversed that quote-unquote spiritual path that we have all read. The person has traversed that, but is still unrealized. is this person fallen from both? And Arjuna, by saying both, implies that to get to this dhyana, to get and to do this, put in all this effort to get to Savikalpa Samadhi, the person dropped Karma Yoga. And you said through Karma Yoga itself the person can achieve, but you dropped, then you made me drop. And now, I'm neither doing Karma Yoga nor I could complete Dhyana Yoga. I could do more, neither here nor there. Or at least in this world, in this samsara, I could have enjoyed all the, pleasures of this planet, the material benefits that are there. That also I left. And now my journey is cut short, or for whatever reason, the yoga is not complete. This Dhyana Yoga is also not happening. So neither could I tried to meditate, I did all that, but I have not achieved, I have not got to Brahma Samsparshanam. But I let go of the pleasures. I could have had a nice, time. That also I sacrificed. So neither did I get the material, nor I have got the spiritual benefit. Both have not come. So Bhagavan answers, we'll recite verses 40 to 43.
Sri Bhagavan Partha naiveha mutra vinashastasya vidyate nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgatim tata gacchati prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati samaha shuchinam srimatam yehe yoga brishto vijayate अथवा योगिनामेव कुले भवति धीमताम् एतदिदुर्लभतरं लोके जन्म यदीदृशम् तत्र तं बुद्धिसंयोगं लभते पौर्वदेहिकं यतते च ततो भूयः संसिद्धौ कुरु नन्दन.
So Bhagavan says, O Partha, neither in this world nor in the next world is there destruction for this person. Anyone who does good does not surely go to bad state or grief. And he addresses Arjuna as my son. Then he says in verse 41, one who has fallen short of yoga attains the world's reached, but practiced yoga and fallen short. Attains the worlds reached by the righteous, and having lived in that world reached by the righteous for eternal years, the heavens, for a long period of time. If you have time, you should go through the lokas description that we had covered when we did this chapter. So having attained the higher lokas, and depending on the achievement, depending on the karma yoga and the dhyana yoga this person did, whichever loka that person achieved out of the 6 lokas, having attained that and living there for a period of time, an extended period of time, eternal period of time, is born again in the house of the wealthy and the pure. And the other person who was able to attain Vairagya, who completed the yoga but could not attain Brahma Samsparshanam, the journey was cut short, is born in the family of the wise and yogi, accomplished yogi, the yoga yuktatmas. And Arjuna, this birth is so difficult to achieve. So if you recollect, the classic example I gave was of Swami Vivekananda and his guru, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, right? So Swami Vivekananda was born in the house of the well-to-do and well-intentioned. And Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was born in the house of Yoga Yuktatmas. And at very short, young age, look at how much they achieved. Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda said, and I'm quoting, the present is a product of the past. And thought by thought, action by action, knowledge by knowledge, we create in the present the blueprint for our own future. This is nothing but what a lot of people refer to as karma. Therefore, unquote, that is unquote. Therefore, the Hindus believe in previous lives and future lives, future births for embodied souls. This is the theory of reincarnation. And based upon this principle, Bhagavan Sri Krishna gives this assurance that no seeker is ever lost. Although one may slip and fall, although one may not complete, but one who has put in the sincere effort, and the present manifestation may also have come to an end. But as long as this has happened, Bhagavan gives this assurance that this person will not lose it. This is the philosophy of optimism in which the Sanatana Dharma is based. And Bhagavan continues in verse 44 and 45. What happens when this person is born? That's what Bhagavan explains.
Purvabhyasena tenaiva hriyate hyavashopi saha jignasurapi yogasya shabda brahmati vartate prayatnadyatamaanastu yogi samshuddha kilbishaha aneka janma samsiddhaha tato yati param gatim.
Bhagavan says therein, in that birth, whether that birth be like Swami Vivekananda in the house of the prosperous and the pure, the noble and well-to-do, or in the house of the Yoga Yuktatma, that yogi, this Atma comes to be connected with all the past knowledge that the Atma had accumulated through the yoga performed in the previous life. The best thing we can relate to is child prodigies. We have seen lots of child prodigies. How and where did they get it from? They have not undergone any formal training. So something which is inherent, come from wherever. And then this person, having got connected with the knowledge acquired in the previous birth, strives even more than earlier, because this knowledge, and that cut short. So to ensure that it doesn't get cut short again, strives even more for perfection and for accomplishing what was left out. And this yogi who strives assiduously with perseverance, care, with determination, is purified of all sins. Prayatnat yata manaha. And gradually perfected through many births, reaches the supreme state, Param Gatim. Hari Om, thank you. That way we finish the revision of Atma Samyama Yoga or Dhyana Yoga. Thank you very much. Hari Om.
So we'll repeat today's verses.
We covered a lot of verses today.
Yeah.
So we'll skip that part for today only, not for other days. We'll go to the prayer. Purnamada.
Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om. Any thoughts, comments? So yeah, I'm looking forward to starting chapter 7 next weekend. That will be nice. Okay, great. So the revision sessions didn't elicit too many comments or questions. So hopefully, when we recommence our satsang, when we start doing for the chapters for the first time, hopefully there'll be more participation. It's nice, when you express because all of us will learn from your experiences and your thoughts. So I'm hoping for that. So thank you very much. Thank you. Hari Om. We'll start chapter 7 next Saturday.
Thank
Hari
you.
Om.